This is Bärbel at Bärbel Productions, and welcome to step 2 of this file organizing guide, where the main task is to help you guys take control of your design files by giving you a simple and easy file system to work with. In the first and previous video, I showed you how to create the first basic level of a file system. And as you may remember, I expanded this topic to include the whole pattern design business and not only your design files. And we created these folders here with administration, finance, strategy and planning, product, marketing and sales. And for the designing part of the business, a design folder, which I call the design studio. In my business, this is where I keep everything related to the design process and the artwork that I create. And so I'm not gonna delay this step of the file organizing process any further. In this video and this second step, we're going to take a look at the design studio area and how to start to organize and sort your design related files. Because I know this is what you guys are waiting for. And then if you want help with organizing other files in your business, like marketing, we can get into that in another video later on, okay? So the purpose for this second video is to give you an organizing foundation, a system that feels intuitive and structured on a reasonable level for you to manage and keep track of your design-related files and at the same time what status they're in. So let's get started now. So if you followed along in the previous video, you now have these folders here on your desktop computer as well. And these are my actual folders that I use. But I don't want to click into these too much because I want to show you how to create this structure from scratch. So that's why I have created this educational version of my folder structure. So I'm just gonna click myself into this, and here you'll see that I have the exact same folders from last time. So now let's click on the Design Studio folder and begin. Here I have already created 3 folders that I keep in my Design Studio folder. It's the first category divider for the different types of design work that I do. And the first one is, as you can see, illustrations. And as you may know, I create different types of illustrations with ink and fine liner and with markers and sometimes also watercolor. So in my illustration folder, I could create these different subfolders if I would like to. But what I don't collect in my illustration folder is sketches and motifs and illustrations that I create and use for my patterns. Although it may happen sometimes that I do use an illustration I have created for another purpose and reuse it as a pattern motif. So I separate illustration work and pattern work. And so you can see the second folder is pattern design, of course. And we'll come back to this one in a minute. I just want to explain the third one first. So the third folder I call client work, and this can actually include patterns as well, but then it's designs that I have done for other companies and that I don't want to mix up with my other patterns. And this also includes graphic design work that I do, such as logos and other graphic elements or illustrations. So as your first assignment, I want you to do this as well. Take a moment and think about the different areas of design that you do in your business. What does your design studio create? And what categories can you identify? Perhaps you're designing sewing patterns? Then that is definitely a design topic. Or if you're into fashion, you may be a fashion designer. This definitely requires its own folder. Or perhaps you design cars. I don't know, but if you do, name the folder cars. perhaps now you wonder if something like that, product design, shouldn't that be in the product folder? But the way I see it is that there is a difference between design and product. Design is a phase in the product process, yes. But in our case, it's the main phase, and that's why I wanted to have its own folder. But let's say you produce fabric. You're a fabric manufacturer. You have your own little fabric label, perhaps. Then you would put all the files related to the designs that you want to print on your fabric in the design studio. But all the informations and documents relating to the fabric and the manufacturing of it itself, like specifications, prices, factory information, technical information, and so on. Everything that you work on when producing the fabric would go in the product folder. So that's the difference that I'm making between these two anyway. Okay, so let's go back to our design studio folders. So if you do have different categories like I do, I have illustration, pattern design, and client work. I want you to create a folder for each area and name it accordingly. But if you only have one area, pattern design, you don't have to create a specific folder called pattern design for this. You can just skip that if you want to, because it would just be another unnecessary level to click down into at this point. If you do have a pattern design folder, click on that. Let's open that. And now we're getting into the really interesting level, the third level actually. So now let's sit back a little bit. If we take a look at this mental pile or virtual pile of dirty laundry, and by that I mean all the design files and folders lying around all over the place on your computer, let's start out now by finding the first categories where we can start sorting these. And this is where we'll find two antipoles, and they are clean and dirty laundry. Well, I mean, of course, finished and unfinished designs. But I know it's not as easy as that, is it? Because an unfinished design can be in all kinds of phases, just started or almost done. And a finished design can also be some sort of in a gray zone. You may have defined it as completed, but there is still something that makes it a bit uncertain. Perhaps it's a feeling that has developed over time, something that felt perfect before but now feels off, you know what I mean? And maybe you want to rework it a little bit. Well, that's up to you how you want to regard your different designs, but here is one way to handle it. So we could create a subfolder for all the unfinished or not quite pleased with it yet designs that we call incomplete or something. But I'd rather be on the positive note, so I call it work in progress instead. Now this is a very broad category and it can include all kinds of status of a design, from just started to finished but needs rework and all the phases in between. But my advice is to begin as simple as possible and not create subcategories for all these different phases of an unfinished design, because it's just gonna require a lot of work and it's gonna be another level to search and find and click around. And remember from last video, we want to keep the file structure as simple and flat as possible. So if we can avoid subfolders, we should. But if you do have a lot, and then I mean a lot of unfinished designs, there might be a reason for you to divide them into at least two subcategories. For example, just started and almost finished, something like that. And then you have at least two states of your unfinished designs to regard when you go back and want to work on them, for example. But only do this if you have dozens or hundreds of them. Otherwise, I would just keep them all in a work in progress folder altogether. And an upside with your work in progress folder can be an unexpected resource. For example, for those days when you just don't know what to do, what to start with, what to sink your teeth in, you can just go to the work in progress folder and see if there is something that you can work on or use. So it's a source for inspiration as well. So go ahead and create your folder named Work in Progress. So the next logical step would be to create a folder called something like Finished or Complete Designs, right? But I don't want to do that because that's only going to create that unnecessary level in our structure. So let's divide the finished designs that we have into these subfolders instead right away. Collections and singles. So even if you don't have any collections yet, only singles, you can create a collections folder still because you probably have an ambition to create collections or gather your singles in collections later on, because as pattern designers, we want to be able to present our designs in collections, or at least show how to combine them when we show them to companies and trade fairs. And not to forget, a collection can also be a mini collection of just two or a few patterns that are working together. They don't have to be full collections of like 10 or 12 designs. So now we have a work in progress folder, a collections folder, and a singles folder. And the last folder to create on this level is Archive. And this is for designs that you want to discard completely, that you know you're not going to use or show to anybody. And for me, they are, for example, my really early designs that are not suitable for the public eye, but I don't want to throw them away because who knows, perhaps one day I'll use an element or a motif from one of them or just recreate it into a completely new pattern. So don't throw your discarded patterns away. Keep them in the archives folder for now, and then you don't have to think about them, but they are still there. So this is the first step for organizing your design files in the Design Studio. And this is a good, simple start. We don't have to complicate it more than this. And when you do this yourself, you might find that you have more categories than these. For example, you may have a whole bunch of design files that are something that you would call a placement print, that is just a single motif and not something that you have composed into a pattern. And if you do have designs like that you already know is going to be categorized like a placement print, I think you should definitely go ahead and create a folder called placement print, for example, or whatever design that it is that you have, and collect them into a separate folder at this stage. Any way you can sort and categorize your designs is good. But if you don't have decided if something is going to be a placement print or a repeat pattern, I would say just stuff them in either one of these folders, like singles or work in progress, and then we're going to decide what to do with them in a later step. So you have created these folders, and now comes the part where you have to put in some hard labor. This is the tedious part that may require quite a bit of time and effort, and this is probably also why you haven't done this before. It's time to find and take a look at every single design file that you have saved in a corner somewhere. Yep, it's time. But I really don't want to daunt you here with an overwhelming task. That's just gonna put a stop to this, because I want to encourage you to do this. It's gonna be so rewarding in the end. but also during the process, because I promise you, you will rediscover your work when you start doing this and get a whole bunch of new ideas. And when everything is sorted, you will feel so much more at peace, in control, and professional. And the way to do this is in small bites. No hurry. You have your backup, right? Everything is safe and secure. Now you can do this at your own pace. But my advice is to set the timer for like 1 hour or at least a half hour every morning when you will do this. This way you will move forward just a little bit, a step at a time, and in the end you will have completed this work, no matter how long it takes. So I'm not just gonna drop you here and let you do this the rest on your own. I will continue to guide you a bit more into this process of hard labor. So step 1, let's take on the collections. And if you don't have any collections yet, you can just sit back, watch, and contemplate for future work, right? So first off, if you do have collections, create one folder for each collection inside the pattern design folder and name it the same as the collection, or if you have a working name, or if you don't have a name at all for it, just call it collection 1 or collection 2 and so on. Just don't let the naming hinder you in your tracks at this point. You can create one collection folder at a time. I would actually suggest you do that. And then go and find all the pattern files that belongs to that collection and move them into the named collection folder. So since I have all my design files already sorted like this, I'm not gonna be able to show you, but let's say I go back to my real folders. Here's my design studio, my pattern design folder. And then I have collections here. So here I have a few collections that are completed. So here is one collection that I have called Colonial Inn. And when I click on that, I have a couple more folders and then I have a couple of files. So what I do is I collect all my patterns inside one Adobe Illustrator document. I don't have one file for every single pattern. I used to, but I found a way that is very effective for me, which is to create sort of a collection template that I use, and then I include all the patterns into in swatches in that document. And I have created a video about this, exactly how I do this, and you can take a look at that if you want to. You will find it in the creative resources section on my website. So here I'm back at my educational files and inside the pattern design folder. So I'm gonna create a mock-up one just to be overly clear. So I'm just gonna call it collection 1. Okay, so I have created this one here. And now I have to go to my different places all over and see where I can find my different pattern files, and then I would drag them into this collection folder. And if you have scans and inspiration images or other related documents, bring them along too. For example, for most of my patterns, or at least the collections, I've created a mood board in Illustrator, so that file goes into the specific collection folder too, as well as documents with text. Okay, so when you have gathered all your files and documents and images and everything into your collection folder, let's say that this is full of different stuff, you can sort them too. So one would be design files perhaps, and then you can have one that's called scans, and then you can have one called images or inspiration images, and then you would put them in the suitable folder. So the next step is an assessment step. What you do now is to open up every single one of the design files or the collection files included in this collection. You open them up one by one and take a look. Are they finished? Or is there something that you're not pleased with that needs some rework? Maybe it's just started and not finished. Maybe you have like 5 patterns that are finished and then you have 5 that are not finished. But if the collection as a whole feels finished and complete, you drag and drop it into the collections folder. If it's not 100% finished in your opinion, you drag it into the work in progress folder. So now you have gathered all your design files for a specific collection and assigned it to a status. Is it finished or does it still need some work? So find and do this to all your collections, one at a time. It doesn't matter if it's a collection of 10 designs or a mini collection. But note that this is not the time to try to gather your singles into collections, because that's a completely different step further along the organizing process. So, repetition of what to do. Create a folder for each collection. Find and move all files related to the collection into this folder. Then assess the collection and all included patterns to see if it's completed or if it needs more work, and move it into either work in progress or the collections folder. And then you repeat this until you have moved and gathered all your collections into the right folder. Next, let's find and sort your singles. So now you start finding the designs that are not within a collection, your singles, and move it into the Design Studio and the Pattern Design folder. And open each and every one up and take a look and make the assessment. Is it finished or does it need more work? And move it to singles or work in progress. And if you have scans and inspiration images that belongs to a pattern design, then I suggest that you create a folder for your pattern as well and name it accordingly. And inside the folder, you can collect all those related documents and images and so on. So for example, I have a pattern called X. And inside of this, I would collect the Illustrator or Photoshop file that you have where you created the design. I would collect any scans or any inspiration images or mood boards or color palettes or anything into this Pattern X folder. And then when I have assessed it, is it finished or not, then I move it either into the Work in Progress folder or the Singles folder. And now just scavenge, browse, search your computer, external hard drives and clouds to find every single design file, folder or document or image that belongs to it and assign it to the right folder. And whenever you are clicking around on your computer, even if you're doing other stuff, if you come across a design file or something related, move it into the Design Studio folder right away, and even the Pattern Design Studio if it's related to a pattern design. You don't have to assess or address it to a right folder immediately, but at least now it's in the right folder until the next time slot that you have set for file organizing, right? Another note, in some systems and file structure, moving means copying. Once you have moved something, delete it from its original place to keep it neat and tidy, because you don't want to keep a copy of the mess, right? And you still have it on your backup, remember, in case you accidentally delete something that shouldn't be deleted. And after a few days or perhaps a few weeks, with doing this a little bit every day, you will start to have a structured and manageable file system for your designs. And then we can start to work on this even more if you feel like it. The structure that we have now is a basic level for keeping everything in one place and getting some control of what we have. It can make it easier for you to go back and systematically complete and finish your designs that you have started, and also give you a little bit of peace of mind. But if you want to have an even more sophisticated system, we can go further and sort our designs by categories and styles, and also by product and business. And that way we can start using every design much more intentionally. And when we create new designs, we will do it more intentionally. And we can also start taking them into the product phase of our business, turning them into something that we feel confident to present to companies and eventually sell. But that will have to be in a coming step of an organizing guide. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so I think that this was everything for this level. And this is just my suggestion. If this is giving you ideas for other constellations and perhaps you want to add another level here or there, or create a folder that I have not created, go ahead. Just do what's best for your business and your pattern design process. So I hope that this has helped you out a little bit and will get you started cleaning out those dirty laundry. And I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.